the show. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relax Radio. And it is, in fact, a beautiful, beautiful Monday morning, all right? Now, I'm super excited to be here because I have a lot of amazing thoughts and opinions that I'm going to be sharing with you. But also, while we're at it, I want to know what you're thinking as well, okay? Let me know what your thoughts and opinions are. Let me know what you're thinking, and let me know how you feel about everything that we're going to be talking about. Now, before we actually head into the conversation, I'm going to very quickly remind you that you can, in fact, be a part of the show. All you need to do is just text me or call me on 078-52473-473. Share your thoughts, share your opinions, because I would love to hear what you have to say. All right. Now, today we're going to be talking about, is hydrogen power actually good for the environment? Is it actually much more sustainable? So what are your thoughts on it? Let me know what you're thinking, and let me know how you feel about this as well. All right. But before we head into that conversation, I want to very quickly remind you that you can get in touch with me. All you need to do is just text me or call me on 078-52473-473. Share your thoughts, share your opinions. But also, while you're at it, don't forget to go download our app. All right. Because our app too is available for download. And all you need to do is just to head on over to the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. And that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed and you're always updated by downloading our app. Okay. It's super easy. It's really simple, because all you need to do is to head on over to the Play Store, to the Google or the Apple App Store, and just type Relax Radio, and that way you can actually make sure that you download the app. And don't forget to don't forget to follow us on our socials either, because that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed and you're always updated about the very latest. So go like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. And obviously, don't forget to, share your thoughts, share your opinions, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well, because that is absolutely amazing. Okay. And now let's actually head into our conversation, because we're going to be talking about if hydrogen power is actually environmental friendly, or is it actually just not good for the environment. All right. Because that seems to be the biggest question here in the United Kingdom. And obviously, this question comes about with the fact that the government actually published a much awaited report, right, based on hydrogen and the hydrogen economy. So what exactly is it going to mean for us? What exactly is it? What exactly is going to change, especially when we make this switch, when we finally switch to a hydrogen powered environment. All right, now that is what we're going to be talking about. So if you want to share your thoughts and ideas with me on it, don't forget to do that. But now let's actually head into our conversation. Now, obviously, when governments are making these reports, when they're, analyzing data, they kind of analyze stuff, and then they kind of come with a final report, right? Now, opting for hydrogen that is made using fossil fuels rather than renewable electricity could actually create up to 8 million tons of carbon emissions every year by 2050, right? So by 2050, if we actually create carbon through fossil fuels, we're actually going to have 8 million tons of carbon emissions every year. Right. And this is according to an analysis of government data. All right. Now, the figures actually show that the use of fossil fuel hydrogen or even blue hydrogen could actually create some carbon emissions each year that more than 1 million petrol cars would produce. All right. So maybe in the long term, obviously, it's not even a maybe at this point. It's quite obvious that in the long term, creating hydrogen or creating blue hydrogen isn't actually the best way to go about it. Green hydrogen, yes. Now, if you don't know what green hydrogen, it's essentially when you take the hydrogen molecules from water, and the byproduct that exists is just oxygen, right? And in instances like that, oxygen isn't something bad, because we need oxygen to breathe. We need oxygen to actually, plants need it for photosynthesis. We need to breathe. So obviously, oxygen isn't something that is harmful for the environment, right? It's something that we need for the environment, right? However, blue hydrogen might not necessarily be that helpful, especially because you're taking it from fossil fuels, and fossil fuels in itself have a multitude of other gases that might actually be emitted when they are creating blue hydrogen, right? So blue hydrogen would actually create that same amount of carbon emissions each year. That's a little bit more than a million petrol cars would produce, right? And this is in comparison with using zero carbon green hydrogen. Okay. Now ministers have actually planned to use both blue hydrogen and green hydrogen to essentially help with this process. But obviously, with the latest findings, with all of these scientists saying, look, what, blue hydrogen might not necessarily be the best way to go about it. It's important that our ministers, it's important that our government actually makes an informed decision, because if not, what's going to happen is that IPCC report, remember all of those terrible things they said in that IPCC report, well, that's going to come true really, really soon, right? So we do have a sort of role, we have an inherent duty to make sure that our government makes the right decision and makes sure that that decision is in our best interest, right? Now, there's also this whole concern that, when you're using blue hydrogen to replace fossil fuel gas in factories and refineries and even in heating, that means that we will actually have a huge, or rather, an over reliance on blue hydrogen, and that would still lead to millions of carbon emissions, right? So then this whole purpose of actually moving into an hydrogen economy would not actually make sense, because we're still going to have that same level of pollution, we're still going to have that same level of emissions, and that is definitely not good. All right, now make sure you stay tuned, because we're going to head into a small break, and after that we will be back to discuss more of this. So obviously, until then, make sure that you stay tuned. Welcome back to the conversation. It's your girl Sarah right here on Relaks Radio. And we're talking about if hydrogen power is actually much, much beneficial, or in fact, much, much more dangerous and detrimental to the society, to the environment, in comparison to what we use currently, right? Now, the reason we're having this conversation, the reason we're discussing this, obviously, is because the United Kingdom actually, our government actually published this long-awaited, report that actually spoke about all of the effects of hydrogen power and the kind of changes that they were going to make, to actually come or rather they were actually going to make to change their status and to get into and to make a change to a hydrogen based economy. All right, so that is what the conversation is about. Now, like I said, I'm very excited to be here, but obviously I want to share my thoughts and I want to share my opinions with you. But also, while you're at it, I want to hear what your thoughts and opinions are. All right, so don't forget to do that. All you need to do is just text me or call me on 078 share your thoughts, share your opinions. Let me know how you feel about this. All right, and don't forget to go like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok either, because that way you can actually make sure that you're always informed and you're always updated about the very latest that happens, not just here in the United Kingdom, but in fact all over the world as well. All right, so don't forget to share your thoughts. Don't forget to let me know what you're thinking, and don't forget to go like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and download our app as well. All right, now let's actually head into our conversation, because we're going to be talking about hydrogen. We're going to be talking about the hydrogen economy, what exactly this means for the future in England, and why this might not necessarily be a good thing, given the fact that new data has actually found that when you're using hydrogen power, especially if it's blue hydrogen, especially if it's hydrogen that is taken from fossil fuels, how that might actually contribute to much more carbon emissions than than when you would use normal fossil fuels, right? Which is what is presently happening. All right, so now let's actually head into that conversation, because obviously we have so much to talk about right now. Like I said, now ministers are actually trying to use a combination of both green hydrogen and blue hydrogen. All right, blue hydrogen is essentially hydrogen that you take from fossil fuels, whereas green hydrogen is something that you take from water, right? And so then the byproduct of green hydrogen would essentially be just oxygen, whereas in blue hydrogen there would be other byproducts as well, and that contributes to carbon emissions, right? So now the biggest problem right now is, if we're trying to make this move to a green economy, to a much more sustainable economy, then having something like green hydrogen, or rather blue hydrogen, isn't actually going to help us make that change, right? Because blue hydrogen is extracted from fossil fuel gas in a process that actually requires this carbon capture technology to trap emissions, right? But the thing is, this method still sort of fails to capture between 5% and 15% of the carbon dioxide, right? And another thing that we need to keep in mind is that carbon emissions are also released when this fossil fuel gas is extracted from oil and gas fields, right? Now, to talk about oil and gas fields, recently, ever since Alok Sharma spoke about how there's going to be a catastrophic climate failure if we don't really make that change, if we don't take the necessary steps we take. There was also plans for a new oil field that was that extraction was going to happen in. And the truth of the matter is, at that point, Alok Sharma didn't really criticize it or condemn it and say, look, what these oil fields are actually really unhealthy at this point of time for our environment, right? And what they basically did was they just went ahead and they gave the green for these oil fields, right? And now that also happens to be one of the other bigger issues that we need to keep that we need to focus on as well. All right, but to get back into our conversation now, using blue hydrogen exclusively to replace fossil fuel gas would actually result in between 6 million and 8 million tons of carbon dioxide emissions every year, right? And this is from the late 2020s, or the equivalent of running basically an average of 1.5 million or more fossil fuel cars on the road every year by 2050. All right, so that is the equivalent of carbon gas emission that is going to be there if we use blue hydrogen. All right, so probably the best way to go about this is actually to use green hydrogen and not necessarily rely way too much on blue hydrogen, because as we've seen, as data has shown us as well, if anything, we've just gotten to see that using green hydrogen is much safer and much better than using blue hydrogen. All right, so if the government actually used zero carbon green hydrogen to meet a third of the UK's forecast on hydrogen demand, blue hydrogen would actually create the same emissions as around 1 million cars running on the UK's roads each year. All right. And the analysis was also based on government data that was published last week. It is, long-awaited report on the future of the UK's hydrogen economy, right? So that's just what is happening. And the thing is, even if we want to move and make this change, even if we want to make sure that, we make the necessary changes that we have to, we really need to make sure that our governments, that our rulers are taking these decisions to make sure that to make sure that they do what is best for us, do what's best for our environment. Because at the end of the day, the truth is, a lot of the leaders that are in the present aren't really going to be alive in the near future, right? They'll probably not be alive. And it's just the young people, it's you and I, the younger generation, that has to deal with all of these incompetent decisions that they made. Right. So that's why it's important for them to take the decision and make sure it is the correct decision. All right. Now, make sure you stay tuned because we're going to head into a small break. And after that, we will be back to discuss more of this. So obviously, until then, make sure you stay tuned.
The valuations that you place on an asset are always behind you. It's always in hindsight. It's never in front of you. And that's one of the challenges, right? Because you're always valuing what happened yesterday. And what you need is what's going to happen tomorrow. What am I saving or investing for? Why am I doing it? When will I need the money? And how much money do I need? Yeah. So that's quite important, because when you're looking at your net worth, you got to start with saying, well, what do I want my net worth to be? So that there's a goal. And then work backwards. How do I get there? And if I can start with £50 or $50 a week, if I save that every week, and you can go online and use calculators online. I don't have to teach you the maths behind it, but you can say, okay, and if I get a 3% return and I put this away for how long will it take to reach my goal? And that's called just this.